Better Daily, where we work hard in our minds, bodies, and our spirits to become 1% better every single day. Download the app and join our Betterment family at betterdaily.live to catch the video version of these podcasts. Here's your host and my dad, Alex Van Houten.
What is up, Better Daily? This is your host, Alex Van Houten, and today in Better Daily Live, we are on Word Thursday. Word Thursday is the day where we talk about a word from the week. We unpack what it means and potentially what it has to do with our 1% Better Daily. If you haven't already, please go to the link in this description and go find our podcast. Quick click on it and leave us a raving review. So we've got some awesome reviews thus far, and I'm sincerely appreciative of that. Anytime our family here goes and reviews the podcast in public with raving reviews after this launch, we've got about 20 days or so to accumulate more reviews in which we get to the top of the iTunes new and up-and-coming charts, which helps other people find us and gives us great ratings for the duration of our podcast. And so CEV788 says, amazing show and community. The daily episodes from the Better Daily community are so interesting and inspiring. Thank you, Alex, for the impact of your work on my life. Keep up the great content. And thank you too, CEV. And if I've read your review here and you heard me read it, please shoot me an email and let me know that at coachal@betterdaily.live. I have something special to send to you. So, responsibility. Responsibility, that's the word of the week this week. Responsibility. It's a very, very powerful word. As a dad raising my two young boys, I've got a 6-year-old and a 2-year-old. It's a word that comes up very frequently in our household. And it's a very interesting word because it can mean a lot of different things. So I dug into the definition of it and I dug into the etymology of it. And I uncovered some things that I thought were really powerful and impactful that I want to share with you. So first of all, what does it mean to be responsible? What's responsible mean? The actual definition of responsible is to be able to be held accountable. To be able to be held accountable, or another definition of that is to be the one to blame. So, wow, okay, that's fun. And if you take a step back in history and you go back from our current derivation of responsible that comes from a French word, if it goes back to the Latin, it actually means a pledge of accountability. So it's like voluntarily taking something on. It would almost be like a promise to say that I am responsible for this thing, right? So, for instance, my wife and I, we volunteer at church and we watch little kids for parents when they go into the larger congregation setting. So, they'll come to the door and they'll sign their child in and hand them off. And in that moment, it's like a pledge. I am responsible for your child. I'm making a promise to you to be accountable for the condition of your child when you return. I'll make sure they don't run amok. I'll make sure they don't beat up other children. I'll make sure, they don't pick their nose too much or whatever. And so it's actually an unspoken transfer of responsibility, right? The parent is ultimately responsible for their child, but for that moment, they've transferred that accountability to me, that unspoken pledge or contract, right? In the Greek, however, responsible actually takes on a completely different spin. So Greek is older than Latin. And in the Greek, the word responds to be awake, to be vigilant. And that takes on a completely different connotation. It's like you're a military scout. And your job is to watch over the camp and make sure by night, none of the enemies sneak into camp. Your job is to stay awake, to be vigilant. And wrapped up in this word, and the reason I'm stuck on this word this week is because I taught a Bible study on Tuesday night. I've had some conversations about the prophet Daniel from the Old Testament, and I'm really interested in this word, blameless. And I actually intended to speak about the word blameless here in our Word Thursday, but the more I dug into the word blameless, the further I got into responsible. So to be blameless means that you conduct yourself in such a way that you can't be found guilty, right? It doesn't mean perfect. Perfect has the idea that you act in a way that brings about perfect things. That there are no mistakes. There's no room for misinterpretation. This was the right way to be, right? That's to act perfectly. But to act blameless is perhaps you do something that somebody from the outside looking in could misconstrue, but you have good reasons for it. And if you were brought to trial for that particular thing, then you would not be found guilty. So let's say I'm driving on the road and I swerve and I hit a mailbox and blow it all to bits. And, the neighbor comes out and they're like, hey, you hit my mailbox. You need to pay for that. I'm like, no. I'm not guilty. Something else happened that caused me to swerve and hit your mailbox. And they're like, well, I don't know about that. I'll bring you to trial. And so, as the evidence unfolds, it's found that I was swerving to miss a child. There was a child in the road and I swerved to miss the child and I nailed this mailbox, blow it all apart, right? Were my actions perfect? Probably not. Somebody still has to deal with the mailbox problem. But were my actions blameless? Well, yes. If you have to ask, how should a human being act? Should you run over a child in the middle of the road? Or, if given the alternative, is it better that we lose a mailbox? And, you'd be hard-pressed to find anybody who would value a mailbox over a child, right? Why am I talking about this? Because the word responsibility, actually takes on this really deep question about cause and effect in the universe. Responsible response. What is the response of the universe given your actions? When we talk about the word responsible, when we talk about our responsibilities and we become responsible for ourselves, what we are actually admitting, what we're actually saying is, I think the things that I do are a causal force in the universe. I am to be held accountable. I am different from a tree. I'm different from a chicken. I'm different from a toddler. I am responsible. I am a causal force in the universe. This is really powerful and important because I was having a great discussion with a friend of mine about one of the core differences between the philosophies of Buddhism and the philosophies of Christianity. And gosh, man, you could dive down that rabbit hole really deeply. But one of the championed tenets of Buddhism that's throughout the Tao Te Ching is whatever is. It is what it is, people say, right? It is what it is. Let the world be what it's going to be. And part of nirvana is accepting that, is just letting things go the way they're going to go because, what are you in the face of all that? And understanding your place in the big, wide universe at large, right? And, it's kind of attractive. It's an attractive thing to think. Like, I can wipe my hands of responsibility because, whatever's going to happen is going to happen. And there's more to it than that, but that's that in a nutshell. But on the other hand of things, in the Christian tradition, one of the things that Jesus is very adamant about throughout the Gospels in the New Testament is that, sure, the wide world has lots of forces that might be outside of your control, right? But you are not outside of your control. Your actions, your thoughts, your deeds, you are not outside of your control. And to the extent that you are able to own that and turn that focus inward and understand what you as an individual bring to the table in the world, and to the extent that you can get that straight, he would say, seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness. To the extent that you can do that, that little spark, that tiny little bit of control that you have in the world, that tiny little thing, that is worth attending to. And he actually did that in the context of Israel and the Jews at the time being under Roman control. The big Roman government's there and everybody's looking for the Messiah to create some military coup that gets them out of the control. And his message to the people is like, look, before you start worrying about this big giant government that you have to deal with and some big military campaign and what the wider world at large should be up to, how about you deal with you? How about you look in the mirror? How about you turn, the coulds and shoulds of the world in on yourself? Because at the end of the day, what control do you have really? And his argument was like, how are you going to govern a city? How are you going to govern a nation? You can't even govern yourself. In fact, he said this when he was approached about whether or not they should be paying taxes. He said, render to Caesar what is Caesar's and to God's what is God's. He was saying, look, there's an aspect of externality in your life, big giant forces, right? And we can feel that right now. There are big giant forces that are moving outside of our control, and some of us want to have a say in that. However, there are also some big giant forces moving inside of you that you do have a say in. You don't need an elected position. You are elected leader of you in your life. And what's powerful about the word responsible is that when we become causal agents in our own life, when we start to move forward in our direction. We pursue 1% better daily, and the things that we do and the things that we say and the way we show up in the world and what we eat and how we move and how we rest. And we start taking ownership of that and making the most of the hand that we've been dealt. When we do that, what's really crazy and cool about that is your life is like a giant stone thrown in a pond, and the effects begin to ripple outward. When we take responsibility, when we look in the mirror and we take responsibility for us, then it changes the responsibility that we can take for the things around us, and we can show up authentically and with integrity toward those things. And I'd love to hear your thoughts. What have you taken responsibility for lately in yourself that has made a difference for you? Whether it's the way you show up at work, whether it's what it is you put in your coffee, whether it's how many steps you're getting in a day. What have you taken responsibility for that's starting to make a difference in your life? And you see it and you notice it, and it's a powerful thing. It's almost miraculous what sort of changes you're seeing because of your willingness to be accountable to you, of your willingness to be awake and vigilant about what effect you do have in the world, your willingness to be a causal force, at least in the tiny little things that do make you up in a positive and powerful way. I'd love to hear about that. What have you taken responsibility for that's making a difference in you? Guys, thank you so much for joining me on Word Thursday. Tomorrow's Flex Friday. I can't wait to be Coach Alex for you and walk you through an awesome exercise. But until then, remember, it's just 1%. You got this.
Thank you for joining us for 1% Better today. Don't forget to subscribe for the podcast. Leave us a raving review to tell others how Better Daily has helped you in your journey. If you want more Better Daily, download our app and join our Betterment family at betterdaily.live. Use code POD to get 25% off your subscription. That's POD, all caps, to save 25% on your subscription. We all have a cross to carry. It's lighter when we do it together. Go to betterdaily.live today.